In this presentation, I want to talk about engineering notebooks. This PowerPoint will cover the following: what is an engineering notebook, why engineers and designers keep engineering notebooks, the contents of an engineering notebook, the different sections that could appear in an engineering notebook, and the standard layout of an engineering notebook, best practices, and some examples. So just what is an engineering notebook? It is a notebook that engineers, designers use to document in chronological order all of their work associated with a specific design project that they are working on. It is clear and detailed descriptions of the process in which they're going through to design whatever it is that they are designing on that project. Someone unfamiliar with their work should be able to take their engineering notebook and see how they came about their idea and how the project was designed and why the final solution was what it was. So an engineering notebook is recognized as a legal document that is used in patent activities to prove the origin of an idea that led to a solution, to prove when events or ideas occurred, prove diligence in turning the idea into a solution, and prove when an idea became a working solution. So again, legal documents can be used in a court of law to prove, even to the extent who is at fault if something fails. Was it the designer? Was it the contractor? Was it maybe even the owner? And so engineering notebooks play a very important role in the design, construction, and the engineering of a project. So engineers obviously use engineering notebooks, legal documentation of work, just how the project just kind of unfolds and all the different things that occurred throughout the project. Engineering students, designers use engineering notebooks. Engineering students use them to develop time management skills to help them improve research, documentation, and communication skills. It's the basis for professional presentation of work, and so it helps students kind of document everything, go through an engineering design process, and really get a good feel for what it's like to design and engineer things on a professional level, and they will be better prepared when they get into a professional career as an engineer. So here are the things that are typically in an engineering notebook. All these things may not be in there, but it just depends on the project and the type of engineer that you are. Discovering the problem, the research, sketches, brainstorming ideas, calculations that may be needed throughout the project, daily thoughts or ideas, pictures, input from experts, maybe even from from other people who are working on the project with you, work session and meeting summaries, test procedures, results, and conclusions, digital technical drawings and design modifications, why certain things were changed throughout the project. Everything you do and think that is related to a specific design project really needs to be in this engineering notebook to help document what occurred throughout the design process. So there's different sections, and engineering notebooks are different. They're used different. So not every engineer uses their notebook the same. They don't all have the same layout. They're used different, and so just take that for what it's worth. But there are different sections. You may have a title page. You could have a table of contents, the general chronological entries, references, business expert contacts. All those things are suggested, but again, they may not be included in an engineering notebook. So here's a typical layout. Again, the layouts are different. They may not all be the same. Maybe they have some sort of grid paper for you to sketch or do tables and different things on. All pages are numbered, dated, signed by the designer, signed by a witness, include a statement of the nature of the notebook. Again, all these things may not be included, but could be included and have been included on some engineering notebooks in the past depending on the setting. So best practices, all work is to be done in pen. Markers that bleed through the paper should not be used. Pages are in order, so you want it to be in chronological order. It should be in ink at the top of the page. We use pen because it is permanent and it shows that nothing has been altered without there being a way to mark up, and you'll see that in the presentation later on. So notebooks are bounded, so you're not to add pages or take pages away. Again, this is a legal document, so everything we do must be permanent and cannot be altered unless it is documented or we see evidence that something changed along the way. You cannot add pages, cannot remove pages. So entries begin at the top of the page, working from left to right to bottom to top, just like we would do anything else. We'd do not leave blank space if at all possible. If there is extra space that you just really don't feel comfortable starting something new, you would put an X across it, and as you see in the example there, and you would sign that space so that someone else can't come along and add to what you've already done and accuse you of doing something wrong. Again, it's a legal document and all space must be used up, and we must show that nothing was added or taken away in any way. If you make a mistake, you need to draw a line through it and enter the correct information and then initial the change. Some people even add a date of when that change was made. You never erase or remove anything, and you see some examples of that there. Again, they put their initials and the correction, but they did not put a date. I would recommend you put a date just because it shows when that change was made. So you put a date of each entry into the notebook, so every time you add something you would want to date it. Here's an example of that. So insert items are permanently attached, so you would attach things with glue sticks or tape. You would not want to use regular glue. We'll talk about that in just a moment. No loose leaf items. So anything you add to this notebook needs to be glued or taped in so that it's permanent. So if anyone tries to move it, it would show that it had been altered. So you would sign, if you add something, you tape something in or you glue something in, you would, I know you saw that floating signature there on the screen, but that floating signature is a way to sign across what was added and the permanent page from the notebook to show that it was added at a particular point. So sign and date each page before the next page is started. Again, this doesn't always occur, but a colleague or mentor should collaborate the events or facts on each page and sign as a witness. Again, you may not do this in every circumstance, but in some circumstances this may be done. You need to store the notebook in a very safe place so that it cannot be altered or changed by anyone other than yourself. Sketches should be included. You would want to label those sketches, a description of the sketch. Calculations and figures are clearly labeled, as you see there. Progress entries reflect on the task accomplished, the successes, the failures, things you discovered, things you may want to consider in the future, and reflect on the task that needs to be completed at that point, what things need to be done from this point forward, kind of like a checklist. So your notebooks need to be neat, accurate, legible, and thorough. Here's some examples of some engineering notebooks. Again, they may not look this colorful, but it's just an example. Here is another example. And here is a third example. So a course binder is different than an engineering notebook. We don't really use a course binder in our courses, but they're not meant to be a legal document or a record of every single thing that is done throughout a project. They're more to keep the best work that you've done. Think of it like a portfolio. You would include your best work from activities, from research, reference material, handout. So in our classes, we alter things a little bit. We kind of keep some of these things in line, but a little bit different. So for example, we will number our pages in order, chronological order, from number 1 all the way through as far as you go. Your notebook should be bounded. You should be using a composition notebook. You cannot add pages. You cannot remove pages without disturbing the binding. No pages are removed from the engineering notebook for any reason. The engineering notebook is a continuous document. That means when you have finished an assignment, skip a few lines and then begin your next assignment. When the notebook is full, a new one begins and picks up where the other one has ended, and you would archive and store the old notebook. Entries start from the top of the page, working from left to right, from top to bottom. Markers bleed through your pages, and you do not want that to happen, so it is not recommended that you use markers, but you use color pencils instead. That is a much better option to color sketches or different things you want to do in color. Insert items that are meant to be permanent by the use of glue sticks and or tape. So you would not want to use bottle glue. Bottle glue will cause your pages to wrinkle, to distort, and so a glue stick and tape are much better options. So here's an example of an entry in our engineering notebook. So you would have a title. So you would write your title. You'd want to do something to highlight that title. You want to put it in a box. You want to circle it, highlight it, something to make that title stand out. You'd want to enter a date, and you'd want to write down your initials. So in a class setting, what I would typically have students do is make their first entry in their engineering notebook by entering in the classroom rules. So your title for this example would be classroom rules. You'd enter in the date that you completed this entry, and you would write your initials. And so you would write down these rules. You could abbreviate these rules. You can shorten them as needed. But all students would write these rules into their engineering notebook as their first example, first entry into their notebook.